dream in time gone by.
Bonjour, everybody. It's the Universal Critic. I talk about whatever I want, whenever I want. Today I'm reviewing the latest adaptation of the ever-popular and ever-famous musical Les Miserables. Now, let me just say several things first to set the stage for this review. I have not read the book, nor have I seen the stage musical or any of the other film adaptations, so when I went to see this film, I had a completely open mind, and I had only heard the buzz about the music, and nothing else. So I'm judging it solely on its own merits here, and I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it had some flaws. It wasn't perfect, but it did a very good job, and I was never bored. And which for a 3-hour movie is not an easy task. But let's get to the story, or stories. And I can't explain the entire plot of this film because that would take, 3 hours, but I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. Hugh Jackman is Jean Valjean, a convict who breaks his parole and becomes an honest man. He becomes wealthy and successful, and then he meets Fantine, played by Anne Hathaway, who has a child named Cosette, who is eventually played by Amanda Seyfried when she grows up. Through a series of events that I won't explain, both for spoilers and them being too complicated, Cosette winds up in Valjean's care, and when she's a teenager, she falls in love with a revolutionary named Marius, played by Eddie Redmayne. And all the while, Valjean is pursued by Inspector Javert, played by Russell Crowe, who we'll get to later. But, see, what makes this movie work, aside from the stellar cast, is the fantastic music. I simply adore the music in this movie, but there are two things that make it unique. The music itself is very, very good, but there's two things that make this movie different from other musicals. For one thing, it's 95% of the dialogue in this movie is sung. 95% of the movie is music. There's almost no dialogue at all. Though I'm told in the musical there's no dialogue at all. Here there's a few segments of dialogue, but they're pretty unnecessary. You probably could have sung those. Half the time it's not even really music, it's more just talking, and half the time the characters are singing just like, this is what I'm feeling right now, kind of music. So yeah, it's basically like an opera. But that's not a bad thing, at least not for me it isn't. I can't speak for you, but I enjoy that. Another thing that makes it unique is that the music, they are singing live during the filming. Usually they sing the music in a recording booth, and then they lip sync to the soundtrack on screen when they do the filming. But they actually film them singing live, so the music is much more, that's both for the better and for worse. For people like Hugh Jackman, Amanda Seyfried, and Anne Hathaway, that's a good thing. Now, Russell Crowe, on the other hand, but again, we'll get to him later. See, now let's talk about the cast. The cast does an excellent job of portraying both, the misery of this time period, 19th century France, and both the hope for a better tomorrow that is probably, I'm guessing, comes from the novel and from history, but I wouldn't know. See, and as excellent as Hugh Jackman and Anne Hathaway are, with Hathaway only getting 15 minutes of screen time at the most, my absolute favorites in this movie are Helena Bonham Carter and Sacha Baron Cohen as these comic relief innkeepers. They are a joy. They're good singers, and they're hilarious, and they do what what they're best at in this movie: play oddballs in weird costuming. Yeah, they steal every scene they're in, among other things. But see, now after all that praise, there are some problems with this movie. First, Russell Crowe is a fantastic actor. I really like him, but he's not a very good singer. And the fact that he's singing live certainly doesn't help. But, yeah, it wasn't terrible, it just wasn't that great. Like I said before, this film is very long, at 2 hours and 45 minutes. It didn't feel that long for me, but people who don't like long movies, I'd say give it a shot, but be prepared for a long sit. Go to the bathroom before you go in the theater, because you don't leave afterwards, because you'll be completely lost. And thirdly, the cinematography in this movie was very stagey. With a story of this magnitude, you'd expect big sweeping visuals, and you do get those sometimes, but for the most part, it's very confined. It's just there's this scene where Anne Hathaway does this beautiful song, but the camera work it's just sitting there, her sitting there. There's no camera movement at all. It's just perfectly still, like this. Now, that's not bad or anything. It is based on a stage play, so obviously it's going to be a little stagey, but and again, those complaints aren't big complaints, I suppose, but overall, I did really love this film, and I think it's probably one of the best movies of the year. Though, I found, I read some of the reviews online, and for people who didn't like the movie, and it reminded me of the complaints people had against the other musical I reviewed this year, Rock of Ages. They said that movie was too bland and overlong, whereas this movie they're complaining that it's too overacted, too bombastic, too theatrical. Well, for one thing, it's based on a stage play. It's probably going to be dramatic, overly dramatic, but anyway, that doesn't matter. I just thought you might like to know that overall this movie is it's probably one of the best movies of the year and one of the best musicals I've seen in years. And overall, I think it's going to probably will get a lot of Oscar noms, and I highly recommend it for music lovers and movie lovers. Now before I go, tomorrow I plan to finally get to see Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained, and the review will follow not long after. Just keep telling yourself it's just one day more, isn't it always? I'm the Universal Critic. I talk about whatever I want, whenever I want. Goodbye. Or